A bit of a sad anniversary today, as this is the 1 year anniversary of Mike Leach's death. A true original in a sport where there is no such thing as original. Everybody is a copycat. Everything that's old becomes new again. Everything that's new becomes old again. And there's very little that is unique in college football. Mike Leach was the epitome of unique. Hey, Dad, you were around him certainly more than Michael Borky or I were. And it's really, in some ways, hard to believe it's only been a year, and in kind of the crazy way that time works. It's, it feels like that just happened, and at the same time, it was an eternity ago that happened, because so much has happened since December the 12th of 2022.
Yeah, there's no question. You think about, when you're in sports, you have a calendar, and your calendar goes football and then basketball and then baseball, and then you have a month or so of off season where there's really nothing happening, and then you're right back into football. And so, from that perspective, it does seem like a long time ago, because we've had all those seasons and all those games and everything since then. But at the same time, you're right. It feels like, it was just the other day. And there's probably not a day that doesn't go by where he doesn't cross my mind at some point, especially when you're talking about football. But it's crazy how relevant he still is. I mean, just 2 weeks ago, when Florida State gets left out of the playoff, a video of him going around chiding people for being on committees and talking about how much we really like committees more than we like football makes the rounds, and like, Mike Leach nailed it again. And I feel like we'll be doing that for a long, long time, that there will always be quotes of his that are relevant to different things that happen in the game of football and everything else.
What's your lasting memory?
It's always the press conference after the Alabama game where he talked about dinosaurs and people's arms falling off. I will never in my life forget. First off, as soon as he started going, I gave Stefan Krajnik from the Clarion Ledger, I gave him the eye, and I was like, we're a part of something here. We had that look of like, something's about to happen. We know what's about to happen. And I will never forget looking at those Alabama media relations students who are so used to Nick Saban and the way he does things. They were watching Leach. Their mouths were wide open. Their eyes were huge. And I was cracking up. Just like they had no idea. And I was like, one of those kids has to transcribe this. And how are they going to get through that? Because this is the funniest thing I've ever heard. And he's trying to make like a bigger football point about like, hey, we can't be scared to catch the ball. That was the point of the whole rant. But it took the most circuitous route that you could possibly imagine to get there. And I will never forget that as long as I live.
I don't want to betray any confidence here at all, so I'll be careful, and I'll let you say as much or as little as you would like to. But you had the privilege of sharing a meal with him on at least one occasion, and
couple, yeah.
if I remember correctly, there was a phone call to your mother. Is that accurate?
Yeah. She we were sitting there talking and just BSing or whatever. And the phone rings, and it says Mom on there, and I just looked at it. I was like, you want to talk to my mom? He did not hesitate. Grabbed the phone. This is Coach Leach. And talked to her for a few minutes, and it's like, your son's hilarious. What a funny guy. Great guy. Which I was, all right, pump me up, man. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And he hands me the phone back, and my mom in her little quiet voice just goes, was that really Mike Leach? Yes, ma'am, that's who that was. Don't you ever do that again.
Have you talked to her since about that conversation, like her side of the conversation?
Oh, yeah, a couple times. Yeah, and she was just like, he was telling me what a nice guy you are and how funny you are. I was like, well, there we go. But he didn't tell any lies then.
Very good. And, of course, you host a Christmas party at your home or in your home every year.
Yeah, it's this weekend, yeah.
And last year,
Mm-hmm.
just days before his death, he was in your house.
Hours. I mean, he left my house at like 9 o'clock Saturday, and he passed away, not even a full 24 hours later, I don't think. So, yeah.
And I remember you telling us there was kind of a touching moment there with a little guy, right?
Yeah, my buddy Ryan Sparks, his son Reed, they do custom woodworking.
Okay.
And they do they specialize in what is it, Pinewood Derby cars, those little cars,
the
know
Boy
what I'm talking
Scout
about?
car race, the Pinewood Derby car.
Yeah. So he happened to have one on him that he had made, and Coach Leach saw it and was like, I want that. And so he gave it to him. He wanted to pay for it, and they would not let him. And they got a picture together, and it was I mean, really nice for the guy just to come in, shoot the breeze with everybody, crack some jokes, eat some cookies, take a bunch of pictures and everything, and then he went right back to work after that. As far as I know, he went back because they were doing recruiting that week. And that's what he told me. He's like, I would have been here hours ago, but we've been recruiting. He's like, next year I'm going to set the calendar up where I don't have to miss anything. And that's like, I talked about that today on Facebook. I wish that was the case, man. I wish we were going to see him this Saturday, but alas, that will not be the case.
Borky, some of his most memorable moments came from the time that he was at Washington State because, and this is not a knock, it's just a difference in the way that teams are covered in the Pacific Northwest, way in the Pacific Northwest versus in the SEC. The media at Washington State, or at least some of the media at Washington State, really embraced we're going to ask questions to derail press conferences and get him off the mark. And he was more than happy to oblige.
Every time. I mean, I missed the segment on this show, Weekly Mike Leach. He's at Washington State, and every Wednesday there was something from a press conference that Mike Leach did that we played on this show.
We did that years before he came to Mississippi State, like 2-3 years before.
Yeah. And, but it was every week. And what's funny is that there are people that try to be interesting. There are people that are smart and interesting. And then there are people like Mike Leach that just when they talk for whatever reason, it's just totally different. And he was that guy. I mean, the goofiest stuff he made interesting, and he wasn't trying to. It's just he just had a way of delivering thoughts that nobody else could do.
I
feel like if we had this season, because they won 9 games last year, I feel like one more year of being successful, and we could have settled into that here in Starkville of just asking him whatever because you knew the team was going to be okay, so you didn't have to worry about it.
I will always remember what I think was the last interview that we did with him on this show, and we always tried to schedule 2 segments, and Houston McDavid he loved it because he knew it was good for the show, but he absolutely hated when we said, hey, Mike Leach is coming on. We need you to manipulate the commercial log and blow out a break because odds are he's going to be 5 to 7 minutes late, and he's going to talk into or through whatever break we have, and Houston would begrudgingly make that happen. I'll mention the part of the interview that stood out to me when we come back who spent some time with Mike Leach, lived in Omaha, Nebraska for a while, and apparently still had friends who were in Omaha, and he recorded with Mike Leach a video message. Listen in.
Mike, tell him about the Floribama.
Hey, you guys need to go to Floribama. Are you kidding me? You're stuck up there in Omaha, Nebraska, and you haven't been to Floribama? Get your ass down there right now. Hey, listen, they put the football games on at Floribama, too. They don't just put them on at Omaha, Nebraska. I mean, get down there, have a big time. You will thank me for this.
That was Mike Leach just hanging out with a fan. And he's like, hey, Coach, tell him about the Floribama. Home of the world-famous mullet toss, braziers hanging all over the place from the rafters and the ceiling, and et cetera, et cetera. So
the best thing, though, of all the things, the best thing is football-related, I think. It's when he was an assistant and he planted a fake play script and got Texas to believe that they stumbled upon the Oklahoma play script and were calling defenses based on that until Oklahoma developed a lead. And I think Oklahoma ended up losing the game, right? They were mismatched, and
Right.
Texas came back and won once they realized what was going on. But Mike Leach planted a fake script, and Texas bought it and believed it, and they called the opposite and scored 2 touchdowns out of it.
Mm-hmm.
So if you've listened to this show for any length of time, you know I am a big fan, as many of you are, of the late Jimmy Buffett. And I was obviously, Jimmy Buffett had a very soft place in his heart for Key West, as did Mike Leach. He had a home there and got back anytime he could. In the interim time between being the coach at Texas Tech and being the coach at Washington State, he was on Sirius XM with Jack Arute. I mean, I don't know that you've ever had 2 crustier guys on the radio together in the history of sound over the airwaves than Jack Arute and Mike Leach. But Mike Leach did that show from his house in Key West. And, I mean, you could tell between coughing and hacking and telling stories, he was like hanging out on his back patio with his feet off, bare feet and just talking ball. But because of the whole Jimmy, I was curious when we last had an interview with him if he had ever met Jimmy Buffett. And he told us that he had not. And it was something that he hoped to do. He thought that maybe they would have a lot in common. And then the conversation kind of continued, and there was another guy that was very, very famous for his relationship with Key West, and that was Ernest Hemingway, who also had spent a lot of time in Cuba. And I asked Mike Leach about Ernest Hemingway in Cuba. I don't even remember what he said or exactly how he answered, but it was one of those things, hey, Dad, that he just took off.
He went.
And he just talked and talked and talked and talked and talked, and it was great.
I remember him telling us every place he lived, which included Finland. That one got me. It's like he coached football in Finland.
Yeah.
I remember he's going, and I'm sitting there listening to him, and all of a sudden I went, and it was like, did he say Finland? He lived in Finland? And it was like 20 places. Yeah. I got another one that I've told it earlier on the air, but he did the interview after the Vanderbilt game about Halloween candy, and he was listing off all the stuff he likes and the stuff he didn't. He was totally correct on candy corn. It's a menace. But he talked about he liked Almond Joys, which is, not everybody likes Almond Joys, but some people do. And so I texted him the next day, and I was like, hey, I heard you talking about Almond Joys. My wife makes these Almond Joy cookies. They're chocolate chip cookies with coconut in them. You'll want me to get her to make you some? And immediately back, yes, send them to me, yes. So my wife goes to the Dog Talk show, and I remember I was at dinner with a friend, and she texts me, and she's like, he's not here yet, and the show starts in 2 minutes. I was like, yeah, welcome to my life. He'll be there when he gets there. Don't worry about it. They won't go on too long without him, I promise. He'll show up eventually. So he shows up like 10 minutes late. Who cares? Mike Leach.
Which was right on time.
And it's right on time. So the first commercial break comes, and she goes over and she gives him the cookies. Texts me back, or she calls me. She's like, hey, he got the cookies. I was like, okay, great. So I'm sitting there having dinner with a buddy of mine, and about 45 minutes later, my phone rings. It just says Mike Leach. I was like, uh-oh. I pick it up. I'm like, hello? And he goes, Brian, these cookies are outstanding. All right? I may have already eaten 6 of them. He's like, we've been passing this tin of cookies around the back of this car for the last 10 minutes on the way back to campus here. These are so good. Tell your wife I said thank you. I love them. They're great. It's like, will do. I will pass that along. Thank you.
I love that she did not leave it to you to deliver the cookies. She said, nope, I'm going to do this myself.
I said, you go take care of it. Those are your cookies. Go get your credit.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, very good.